Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Chair of Clean Fuels Alliance America, Kent Engelbrecht.
Hey everyone, good morning, welcome to San Diego. I hesitate to talk about the weather because everybody talks about the weather. I'm guilty of that as much as anybody, but I would venture to guess that everybody is better off being here today than they are back home. If you're from the U.S., I don't know about any other weather, but if you look at the map, it's not good. You're better off here. So, well, anyway, they asked me to speak, and I had to think of something to talk about, so I took my favorite topic, and it's going to be about me. So we'll get this going here. So anyway, many of you know my story. I started in the clean fuels industry way back in 2006 when 1,000 forward-thinking farmers in southwestern Missouri decided to build an integrated soybean crush and biodiesel facility. As a result, I was one of the first employees of Prairie Pride Incorporated. I got to tell you, those were bold decisions at the time. But those farmers had a vision for the future. They understood the potential for biodiesel as a value add for their soybeans and the benefits the plant would provide for their farms and their communities. So we built this facility where there had previously only been a hay pasture that just so happened to adjoin two different railroads and had excellent highway access. The closest crush facility at the time was in Kansas City, 100 miles north. But otherwise, this became known as a frontier plant, a plant on the outer boundary of the existing soybean crush market. But then the financial crisis of 2008 hit. Our lender, Merrill Lynch, went bankrupt. And at the beginning of 2010, the biodiesel tax credit lapsed. These were sleepless nights. More than 40 employees of the plant were laid off, leaving only a skeleton crew to safeguard and market that asset to prospective buyers. Both the crush and biodiesel plants remained shuttered for the next 16 months. So, we often talk about setbacks and obstacles in our industry as stepping stones to greater things. And that's always been true. We've always overcome. But I gotta say, man, those layoffs were painful. They were painful for me. They were even more painful for those 40 employees, their families, and the communities around Deerfield where the plant is located. So, if you don't know, Deerfield is situated between the small towns of Nevada, Missouri, and Fort Scott, Kansas. And I would say on the good side of that long-standing contentious border. Construction of this facility was especially important to Kansas, where absolutely nothing good has ever happened since The Wizard of Oz. Sorry, but if you're from Missouri like me, you're required to poke fun at Kansas. Caleb Little, where's Caleb? Caleb, there you go. I look forward to your feedback, Caleb. Anyway, at the time this crush plant shut down, Bourbon County, Kansas, where Fort Scott's located, had unemployment approaching 10%, while Vernon County, Missouri, was reporting 8%. So losing 40-plus jobs was devastating for that area, especially in light of the financial crisis that was unfolding around the U.S. You can see the importance of a crush plant like this to a rural area that is heavily dependent on production agriculture. Now, it didn't necessarily feel like it at the time, but the path to success that those farmer leaders originally saw was still there. In December of 2010, the blender's tax credit was reinstated. And shortly thereafter, ADM purchased that idled plant, invested in it, and brought it back online. The biodiesel industry stabilized and even exceeded the expectations of those original farmer investors. That crush plant has since expanded by 50% over those initial rates, while the biodiesel plant capacity has doubled. The pain of that temporary shutdown was real. But I'm here to tell you that the success of that biodiesel plant and many others around the country was real too. The accomplishment over those 10 years helped grow consistent, steady demand for biodiesel, which proved to be a massive value add for soybeans to be bought and crushed in Deerfield, Missouri. That plant continues to provide jobs to the community. It has allowed farmers to invest and build capacity of their own. Now, I also endured many sleepless nights around the time I first became chair of the National Biodiesel Board in 2017. Again, it was another difficult time in the industry. In many ways, it was similar to what we're facing now. We've got headwinds generated by issues that aren't entirely within our control. Back then, we had issues with trade, tax credits, RFS, and well, we weren't really sure what to expect with the new president for the next 4 years. So, sound familiar? We're right there again. In regard to tax incentives for 2017, the BTC had expired. It did not get reinstated until February of 2018. But things got worse. In all of 2018 and 2019, the industry was forced to operate without a tax credit. It was finally reinstated in December of 2019. So, for those of you keeping score, and I know my colleagues at ADM have done this for me, that's right. We never had a tax credit proactively in place the entire time that I served as chairman of the NBB. Only under the sage guidance of Chairman Chad Stone did the tax credit finally get passed retroactively toward 2018 and 19, and then through 2022. Thank you, Chad. But it was a time of great struggle and uncertainty for many of us. Since then, we've more than doubled biomass-based production in the United States. Just like the farmer leaders that formed the roots of clean fuels, the vision of those 1,000 farmers in Missouri was correct. The path was there. The success is real. But the struggle that came with this success is also real. Despite the incredible growth, many of us are now, once again, facing challenges. We've made major strides in recent years, though, and I believe that much more success and opportunity lies ahead. The United States is undergoing its first major expansion of soybean crush in a generation, driven by demand for clean fuel feedstocks. The industry is using every available drop of domestic soybean oil, more than 1 billion pounds per month, for the production of biodiesel and renewable diesel. So, I spoke earlier how we built a frontier soybean crushing plant in southwestern Missouri. Well, let's talk a little bit about what's happening today. That frontier seems tame compared to what we're seeing in North Dakota, truly the northern edge of the traditional soybean growing area. People thought the original 23 million bushel plant I helped bring online was ambitious at the time. Again, let's look at North Dakota, where 2 new soybean plant facilities have been built since 2023. One with a crush capacity of 50 million bushels, and another with a capacity of 42.5 million bushels per year. The impacts of biodiesel, renewable diesel, and the RFS are readily evident in that state. In 2002, for comparison, soybean production in North Dakota was roughly 88 million bushels. Now, over 250 million bushels. In North Dakota, the 2 new plants built over the past 2 years will make a huge impact on a lot of farmers and a lot of workers. They will build communities and change lives. And that's just a drop of the bucket of what's going on all across the United States. More than 20 new soybean processing plants or expansions are underway that will add 650 million bushels of capacity, representing an investment in rural America of more than $6 billion. Let's give that. Clean Fuels Alliance America and the industry we represent will continue to grow. There are a number of factors that will determine how much and how fast. One of those factors that we know we can control is our work together as a trade association. We've seen other industry trade groups fall apart because they could not handle the stress of similar market highs and lows. This has never been easy, but it's even harder without a unified message for industry vision for lawmakers, investors, corporate fleets, or any users of our fuels. We need to keep pushing forward towards that bigger vision. In the early days, we could have worked solely for the benefit of soybeans. As a matter of fact, we did that. You guys know this story. We began as the National Soy Diesel Development Board and then the National Biodiesel Board. But in time, we recognized that in order to become a large-scale, legitimate alternative fuel, we needed to build a coalition of complementary feedstocks and technologies that would give us a seat at the table when it came time to advocate for tax, ag, energy, and environmental policy to compete with the well-established and well-funded existing fuels industry. But what would have been the outcome if we had held tight to our initial soy diesel advocacy framework? Certainly a smaller industry with fewer champions for our fuels. Perhaps today we'd be discussing policies for competing niche fuels made out of soybean oil, tallow, and other feedstocks. Small pieces of a small pie. Sorry, I usually don't talk this much. I'm not going to quit there, though. So when we dipped from 2.7 billion gallons of consumption to 2.5 billion gallons in 2017, we could have decided that we'd gone as far as we could go. Maybe we'd maxed out. No, instead, we increased our presence in Washington, D.C., and built a team to work at the state level. We prioritized new markets and different feedstocks. We came together and we grew the industry. So what have we accomplished since then? We've doubled the size of the industry. We developed new markets, heating oil, marine, rail, and SAF, all while continuing to expand our reach in higher blend on-road fuels. The United States, you heard this yesterday, the United States consumed about 5 billion gallons of biodiesel and renewable diesel last year. We generated billions of dollars of added value for Americans' farmers, ranchers, supporting over 75,000 jobs, boosted rural communities, and provided cleaner air with every gallon. And we've created our path forward. We've established renewable diesel as an important part of the country's energy supply and laid the groundwork for sustainable aviation fuel. Dozens of states across the country have added new clean fuel incentives, and again, you heard this yesterday many times, we're going to keep repeating it. Right here in California, a significant majority of the entire diesel pool is biomass-based diesel, an unheard of 75%. We are creating markets for American farmers, supporting rural communities, and helping lead on American energy dominance. The path is here. We have to keep going. So let me just say this. My struggles aren't exactly the same as your struggles, but I understand sleepless nights. And my successes haven't been exactly the same as yours. We all have great stories of how we got here. None of us got here without the help of others. Family, colleagues, investors, family. Yeah, I said that one twice. It's that important. We all should recognize that. Today, policy-wise, we have more questions than answers. But I do know that we can only be successful if we continue the work we've done together. That means all of us, feedstock providers and fleet managers, fuel producers and distributors. And yes, that even means Missouri and Kansas. Now, Missouri and Kansas, that might be a stretch, but working together, we can continue building on the vision of those 1,000 farmers that started me on this path and countless others who have helped Clean Fuels Alliance America grow the industry to where it is today. We've still got work to do. I look forward to working together as we write this next chapter together. If nothing else, it will not be dull. So, buckle up and stay tuned. I thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome to stage Clean Fuels Technical Director, Scott Fenwick.
Good morning, everyone. I'm thrilled to lead this discussion on an exciting and potentially transformative market for biodiesel and renewable diesel, the rail industry. Like many industrial sectors, rail carriers are under increasing pressure to accelerate greenhouse gas emission reductions. As the rail industry moves full steam ahead towards cleaner alternatives, biodiesel and renewable diesel are poised to be a bright and sustainable solution. As Donnell mentioned yesterday, we're incredibly proud to have all 6 Class 1 railroads as members of Clean Fuels Alliance America. That is an achievement worth celebrating. Last year, we heard from BNSF in their backyard in Dallas. And this year, we're delighted to welcome Union Pacific to the conversation. Union Pacific Railroad is one of America's most iconic companies, connecting 23 states across the western 2/3 of the country and serving as a vital link in the global supply chain. As one of the top 5 fuel users in the U.S., Union Pacific plays a critical role in advancing the adoption of biofuels in the North American rail industry. Today, we're honored to have Beth Whited, Union Pacific's president, joining us. Beth is a trailblazer in the railroad industry. Over the past 35 years, she's held leadership roles across Union Pacific, including serving as executive vice president of sustainability and strategy, where she helped shape the company's strategic vision and led efforts to achieve net zero emissions by 2050. Beth's remarkable contributions have earned her numerous accolades, including being named 2021 Railroad Woman of the Year by the League of Railway Women and Progressive Railroading. Please join me in welcoming Beth Whited. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, good morning. I'm happy to be here with you all. Talk to you a little bit about Union Pacific and our kind of role in this market that you're all playing in. We kind of touch every single part of it, so I'll get to that here in a minute. Just a little bit about us first, for those of you who don't know us. As Scott said, we're in the western part of the United States. I always say, think Chicago, Memphis, New Orleans, and west. We obviously touch the other railroads in the east at those interchange points, but we cover really the western 2/3 of the United States. And we haul just about everything you can imagine. Many people don't appreciate that railroads have such a big role in their lives, but food, fuel, all the products needed to build a house and furnish it, and many things we touch multiple times. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that because that's particularly true in the biofuels market. Just a little bit about our strategy, because I think it's really critical in how you think about us supporting this emerging and growing market. We really want to provide the kind of service that allows our customers to do well as we do well. We want to support your growth and ability to hit the markets that you want to hit. And to do that, we really need to be a very safe railroad. It's an unforgiving environment. So our focus is on safety for the communities that we're in, for our employees, and for all the other stakeholders that we interact with. We want to have a service that meets your needs. We want to do it in a really efficient way, and we want to grow and develop our team as a critical part of doing that. So when we think about this market in particular, we believe that our service and the reach of our network really enables us to be a great partner for you. So I'm going to walk through all the ways that we're participating in the renewable fuel supply chain today, including our own usage. So we're a partner when you think about us as touching the original feedstock. We're excited to serve the mighty Midwest. I don't want to get into this argument about Kansas and Missouri. We're in both places. If you want to fight about Iowa, we could fight about Iowa. I went to Iowa, and my husband went to Iowa State, and so that's where the Midwest fighting comes into play at our house. I'm not going to get in the Missouri-Kansas thing, but anyway, we're in both places, and you can see that we serve feedstock in the realm of ethanol, in the realm of soybean crush plants, and also other animal proteins. So that where they're kind of color coded there, and you see them across the mighty Midwest, and with Union Pacific serving about 40 of them. We think we hit about 2 billion pounds of corn oil. We access about 80% of the soybean production west of the Mississippi, and we provide outlets for all of those products, whether they're going into a renewable fuel usage or if they're going into other food production or energy use. So first off, like I said, feedstocks, okay? Next, we hit a lot of the origin facilities that are actually producing these renewable fuels. So you see we have about 25 or so of those origin production facilities that are on our lines, again, heavily oriented in the Midwest, but you also see some across the Gulf Coast where Union Pacific has a fantastic franchise serving really the whole petrochemical coast, if you will, as well as all these renewable facilities that have started to pop up there in Texas and Louisiana. And as well as a few that have emerged on the West Coast. So you'll see that there are a ton of potentials for growth as these expanded facilities come online, and we're well suited to be a transportation provider to the usage markets as they continue to emerge across the western United States. For us, we're very proud to have these origin facilities on us because we are a user as well. So many times what we'll see is origin production facilities producing biodiesel or renewable diesel in locations that we can also take advantage of to fuel our locomotives. And I'll talk about that here towards the end. And then finally, we have a large network, more than 50 destination terminals, and that's growing with some rapidity along all of the consumption markets. You can see it's pretty heavy on the West Coast, but more and more are emerging in other locations across our network as there's expanded use of renewable and biodiesel as well as other renewable fuels. Of course, the ethanol market led the way there, but over time, we've seen more and more uptick from the renewable fuels as well from corn and soybeans. So the destination terminals, in some instances, aren't directly served by rail, so we do also have a large transload network across our entire franchise where we're able to serve markets that maybe don't have that direct rail access. And you can see from the chart there that we've seen really substantial growth in that, 44% over a relatively small time frame. So the market is growing with rapidity. We see the early signs of sustainable aviation fuel taking off across our network as well. We're excited to be a participant in that market with all of you as it expands and grows, and you see much more uptick like what we're starting to see in Europe come into the United States. It'll be a great opportunity for all of us to serve those markets as they expand. And then just talking a little bit about what we're doing at UP, I'll try to spend a couple minutes here. We were a really early adopter of biofuels in our locomotives because of the aggressive science-based targets that we have to reduce our own greenhouse gas emissions. And frankly, the technology really doesn't exist for us to do electric locomotives. We've started to get into hybrids, but as you undoubtedly know from what you've seen go on in just the vehicle markets, those batteries have been difficult to produce. If they are being produced, they are slow to come to market, and so we thought in order to meet our targets that biodiesel and renewable diesel was one of the best ways that we could get there. So we started pretty early blending, particularly in states where there were local incentives, California and Illinois to mention a couple. We sure would like more states to have those incentives as well. But you can see since 2021, we've seen a steady increase. We're continuing to work with the manufacturers of the locomotives to ensure that there aren't warranty issues. There's always been a little bit of concern about seals and gaskets and hoses with the introduction of the biofuels. Our experience so far has been extremely good. We haven't seen an uptick in maintenance costs because of the blend that we're doing of the biodiesel or the renewable diesel, but you'll see us continue to be a player in this market. While we're excited about the SAF emerging, it does raise concerns for us a little bit about supply. So we're glad to see the investments happening so that there'll be fuel available for all of us to use in this emerging world. Finally, I just want to show you the slide with all of these facilities on it. What you can really see is how saturated our network is across the entire supply chain. We get the feedstocks, we have the origin facilities, we serve the destination terminals, and we're utilizing it ourselves across this network. So he talked about the fact that there were all the six Class 1s were participating in the Clean Fuels Alliance. Union Pacific is very proud to have been the first railroad to be a participant in the Clean Fuels Alliance. We see a lot of benefit. We're excited about where the future is going to take us. We're excited to help you grow your businesses, and we're excited to see how far we can take the blend for our own usage. So thank you for having me here today. I'm going to turn it back over. You're going to hear a panel about what the other different modes within the rail industry are doing. So I'm going to have Scott come back up and turn it over to him. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. Yep, I'll take it. Thank you, Beth. Well, let's keep this topic rolling forward. Up next, we've assembled a lineup of rail experts to explore the future of fuel in this industry. When it comes to traditional diesel-powered locomotives, could the end of the line be in sight, at least for diesel fuel? Let's meet our panel. First, it's my pleasure to welcome Lisa Colicchio, who serves as Sustainability Director for Metrolink. Metrolink is the third largest regional rail service in the nation. Building a bridge to zero, Lisa spearheaded the bold move to eliminate all petroleum-based fossil fuels from their locomotive fleet. Metrolink is the first rail agency in the nation to power all trains with 100% renewable diesel from recycled natural fats and vegetable oils. Please make her feel welcome. Lisa? Next, I'm excited to introduce Otis Cleott II. Otis has served as president of Pacific Harbor Line since 2012, where he oversees the rail transportation, maintenance, and train dispatching services to the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach. He's also a decorated military combat veteran, having served in the Special Forces. His leadership in both rail and military operations is nothing short of extraordinary. Come on out, Otis. And last, but not least, we're not quite done with UP yet. It's my pleasure to welcome Thad Call. Thad has more than 23 years with Union Pacific Railroad and has served as the General Director of Sustainability at UP since 2022. He leads Union Pacific's extensive sustainability efforts, including developing strategies to meet the company's target to cut its Scope 1 and Scope 2 GHG emissions in half by 2030. Welcome, Thad. Thank you. So while it's most kids' dreams to work in the railroad industry, you guys get to live that dream. But let's take a minute, introduce our audience to each of you. Tell us a little bit more about yourself, your role, your organization, and how this interacts with the clean fuels industry. Lisa?
Thank you. I'm actually a climate change champion, and I've been in the sustainability space for the last 20 years, first starting in commercial real estate and greening up buildings, and the last 5 years in transportation. So I lead sustainability for Metrolink, and we've set very aggressive targets towards a zero emissions future. I actually developed the first climate action plan in 2020, all the ways that we can reduce our impact around energy, water, and waste. But most importantly, our entire carbon footprint, 95% of that is solely attributed to the fuel that we're pouring into our tanks. And coupled with that, we run track. And so 90% of our track is in the backyards of disadvantaged communities. And so for those reasons, we're really focused on reducing our impact. And just a little bit more about Metrolink for those who might not be familiar with us. We are the third largest passenger rail industry in the nation. And we span 550 miles in Southern California. We cross 6 counties, and we have 69 stations. And our fleet, we've got 55 locomotives. So we're definitely very focused on reducing our impact and improving air quality for our communities.
Thanks, Lisa. Otis, I know you brought a little bit more information. You've got some slides to share with us. Help us understand, about you, about Pacific Harbor Line, and the role you do, because you've got a different role. We've got a passenger rail here, you being a short line, that absolutely representing, a Class 1. But tell us a little bit more about Otis and Pacific Harbor Line as we throw up the slides.
Absolutely, Scott. First of all, good morning, everyone, and thank you guys for allowing us to be up here and share a little information with you all. Pacific Harbor Line is based in the ports of LA and Long Beach, and we are what's considered the hybrid of the ports. And this gentleman here on my right is one of my largest customers, Union Pacific, and BNSF is our second largest customer, along with all the marine terminals that are in the port. Here's a little more information about PHL. When you look at the port complex, and I'll show you a map later, the next map will be the port complex. The complex itself is about 19 miles in radius, and within that 19 miles, we have over 100 miles of rail inside that 19 miles. So you just think about that, and just think about how wildly different my days are from Monday to Sunday. And it is a 7-day-a-week operation, by the way. So here's a photo of the complex itself. And all of the white that's on there, those are the marine terminals. And there are 9 that are served by rail, and we touch all of them. And so if you have there's a diagonal line that kind of goes right through the middle of that slide right there. So we've got the Port of Los Angeles on one side, the Port of the Port of Long Beach on the other side. And then we have a man-made island right there, which is called Terminal Island. And it's also split in half. So again, our primary role is to be the hybrid referee in the port. And here's another slide. Here's a really good one that we like to talk about. When we look at SmartWay, Pacific Harbor Line was one of the first shoreline railroads to join the SmartWay program. And we've been a member of the SmartWay program since 2006. And we've actually invested over $16 million of our funds, along with millions of other dollars of public funds, into the sustainability portion of it. We were also the first railroad to have our entire fleet upgraded to what we call Tier 2 level, and that was back in 2007. And then we did it again in 2011, where we upgraded our fleet to what we call Tier 3 plus. And then additionally, that wasn't enough, so in 2018, we actually tested the first Tier 4 switch engine, and we still have that locomotive at this time. And so since that still wasn't enough, we came back in 2023, and we received the first battery electric switch engine in the industry here. And so we've done quite a bit when we talk about sustainability, when we talk about the environment, and so I just wanted to share that bit with you. And at the end of this, I'll get to one of the reasons why I'm such a proponent of the environmental side. So these are just some of the things that we've done on the environmental side. As I mentioned, we're in the port complex, and in the port, particularly the Port of Long Beach, I think they're celebrating their 20th year this month of being the green port. And so with them being the green port and us being, participating partners, everything that we do on a technology-wise is to better it, and it's to become better environmental stewards. From our locomotives to our company vehicles are hybrid, to our golf carts that we use at marine terminals. We've changed out all of our diesel golf carts to electric golf carts. So we're continually perpetuating this cycle of getting cleaner, getting cleaner, getting cleaner. And the ports themselves have a mandate of 2035 getting to zero. Well, we wanted to get there faster. That's what we did in 2023 by getting the battery electric locomotive. So I really wanted to just zip through some of these slides, and I think I've chatted about most of this stuff, and have a perpetuates sometime talk a little bit too much about it. I know Scott mentioned for us to have 3 slides. I think I have slightly more than 3.
That's quite all right.
But I won't have any Kansas, Missouri jokes for you, okay? And I won't do the Iowa State. So this slide here, I believe this is the one that talks about our renewable diesel portion of it. And then the next one will be the marketing part. So with this, we talk about our engine and infrastructure compatibility, our fuel emissions, California laws. We talked a lot about yesterday. They talked a lot about regulations and so on, so I won't get into that piece of it. And then we talk about our R&D blends. In the next slide, I'll talk about the market update. Renewable diesel in the second quarter averaged 158 barrels a day. And we talk about the barrels. 1 barrel represents 42 gallons. And this is just a U.S. Energy slide that was presented to us by our supplier. And I just wanted to share that one with the group as well. And that's it. That's our family, Anacostia family, which PHL is a member of and the largest of the group. And that's my presentation, Scott.
Otis, as you change out some of those diesel-fueled golf carts, we may need to talk. I may want to pick a couple of those up.
All right.
Thad, tell us a little bit more about yourself,
Sure.
your role within UP.
Yep, and thank you for the warm welcome that you've given all of the railroad industry here at the conference. UP is proud to be a member of Clean Fuels, and we feel like Clean Fuels is really helping us in our decarbonization journey and our adoption of biofuels. A little bit about myself, like you mentioned, 23 years with Union Pacific in a variety of different roles across a couple of different departments. So you could say I came a little more recently to the sustainability space as sustainability has moved into the corporate strategy department at Union Pacific. So there's a lot of, looking at things strategically. I spend a lot of time working on our decarbonization strategies, how we're going to hit that SBTI goal of a 50% reduction, and what are the right levers for Union Pacific to use. But my journey really began when I was 7. Christmas Day, came downstairs, and there was a model train going around the Christmas tree. I was hooked. I was absolutely hooked. And ever since then, I've had an eye on working in the railroad industry, really appreciate both the history and also the way in which railroads really interconnect so many different parts of this great country of ours. Railroads, Union Pacific, has been doing sustainability before it was cool. If you think about it, one thing, we believe that not only are we about decarbonizing our own operations, but really, when you remember that we can haul a ton of freight a mile for 75% less fuel than a truck can. That's an amazing statistic. And so we help enable the green economy throughout the United States by being able to offer those kind of shipping solutions at a much less carbon footprint. And so that's something that we believe we can really help out with as well.
No, absolutely. And I think that is important to note that, when we talk about the long haul shipment of goods, trucks are great across on highway, but the railroad industry, nobody does it better when you're looking at cost per pound of freight. So yeah, that's absolutely critical. And I can relate, to that story, around the Christmas tree. Actually, my father-in-law years and years ago helped build my son a model rail set, and we've still got it. It's, 20 years old now. I need to run home and see if that's a UP locomotive. So
There's more of you out there. I know who you are, right?
Well, let's focus a little bit upon your differences. What shapes the decisions? Obviously, clean fuels represents biodiesel and renewable diesel and sustainable aviation fuels as well. But you guys each come from a different market segment, as we talked about, versus moving passengers versus freight and short line and class one. What go into those day-to-day decisions, the real nitty-gritty? We know performance. Absolutely. You expect, everybody expects performance from whatever fuel they use. But above and beyond that, what goes into the choices you make regarding your fuels that you're using? And is it just availability? Is it just sustainability? What are all the factors? Lisa, let's start with you.
Sure. A little bit more about our journey. We feel that we kind of stumbled on learning about renewable diesel about 5 years ago. We did a lot of research, talking to our partners, other rail agencies that were trying out renewable diesel, talking to academics, and also we spent a lot of time with CARB. Right? We've seen the tests, we've seen the data, but that's on a regular diesel engine. It's not a locomotive. And so we just did tons of research before taking the foray and is this something that we could try? And so luckily through our conversations with CARB, they were pretty receptive to trying it. And they even wanted to help us and do testing of a locomotive. And that was really the holy grail for us because, we all know that renewable fuel and clean fuels is going to get you there on GHGs, which is a win for the environment. But really the holy grail, especially for CARB and for our communities, is health impacts and criteria pollutants. Mm-hmm. And so we wanted to really see what were those numbers. So after 9 months of rigorous testing, CARB came out and they helped us on a Tier 2 locomotive. They put their equipment, their PEMS testing on our Tier 2 diesel, a Tier 2 locomotive running petroleum diesel, and then they did that same test side by side with that locomotive running renewable diesel. So we have the data, we have the numbers, and we know that we can reduce NOx by 2.5% and particulate matter by 37%. And in looking at our volumes, on average, we use about 8 million gallons a year of fuel. And so when you extrapolate that out, that's a really big environmental impact. But we also worked with our OEMs. We've got warranties on this equipment. And so that was a big issue as well. And we're traveling passengers. That's our sole purpose. So safety is paramount. That fuel that we're putting in those engines had to be safe for our riders. And then working with our operations to them as well, safety is also of our equipment, right? They were very eager, and we were excited about that they wanted to try new fuel. However, we don't mess with their equipment, right? It can't break the system and break those locomotives. And most importantly, too, we're a public agency. Our assets are hundreds of millions of dollars. And so we don't have the money readily available to buy something new if that renewable diesel breaks something. So those were all the factors, along with our board. So along the way, they were representing 6 different counties, a lot of different viewpoints, but they were very receptive and very supportive. So all those things kind of went into our decision making about this was the right choice. And again, they're all in Southern California, and they know the push towards cleaner fuels and reduced emissions, so that everything was very supportive that we were able to make the switch.
Otis, how about you? What kind of decisions are you making day to day?
I would say from an Anacostia perspective, knowing that we're in the state of California, we have daily reminders that we have to get cleaner. So I equate getting cleaner to being safe. And one of the paramount issues that I focus on, that I'm passionate about, is safety. And again, that goes hand in hand to me and with Anacostia, our parent company, of emission reductions. and then being in the Port of LA and Long Beach with their long-range vision. And again, the citizens of Los Angeles County that are always letting us know that we have to get cleaner, you have to get cleaner. So when you start looking at the decisions to upgrade your fleet and to use R&D, to progress to the electric locomotive, all of those decisions are predicated from safety and from the environment and being in the state of California, and just knowing that that's the footprint that you have to operate in. So for us, we don't just like to meet the threshold, we like to kind of exceed the threshold. So as I am a member of all of these different groups and different environmental associations within the Los Angeles area, within the California area, you don't want to go to the meeting and be the person that they're saying you're not complying. So we kind of take a little different role, and a little bit of that might have to do with the military background, of we want to lead. And we want to be the technological leaders, particularly in our industry, in the short line industry. We can't obviously compete with the class ones, someone who has 5,000 to 8,000 locomotives. You know, our fleet, we have 25 locomotives. And we're very proud to say that we are leading the short line industry in upgrading and implementing our infrastructure and getting cleaner and continuing to get cleaner on a daily basis. So those are the things that lead to that. I know in one of the late panels yesterday, they also brought up the cost portion of that. Cost is definitely significant, right? But that's why you have a group of folks like this in this association, and then you have a group of vendors, different vendors that'll come to you, and then you're able to talk to them about, yes, this is what we want to do, but we have to look at that cost so that it's something that pairs with our model.
Go ahead, Dan.
Sure. So, thinking about perhaps how Union Pacific as a Class 1 freight railroad covering 23 states differs. Obviously, the geographic footprint is different. Also, because of that, our locomotive fleet is a go anywhere, anytime fleet. It's not coming home to roost, so to speak. It's going to be operating 24/7, we hope, right? We want to use those assets. And so, just like Lisa said, don't mess with the locomotive is really critical to a for-profit company that's got this huge asset base that needs to be productive and that needs to be safe, productive, and operating for us on all cylinders, so to speak, not to use a pun. But so when we look at that and the choice for biofuels, other technologies that can help take us closer to achieving our decarbonization goals, like electric locomotives or others. As Beth mentioned earlier, that technology is still getting invented, if you will. When you think about the amount of simply energy that a locomotive consumes and uses, 5,000 gallon fuel tank, that locomotive will start in LA, and 2 days later it'll be in Houston. The equivalent amount of power for that, if you put it in Tesla batteries, for example, that's 139 boxcars full of Tesla batteries. It just doesn't compute yet. That battery technology doesn't yet work for a long haul, heavy haul railroad yet. And so biofuels becomes an opportunity for us to do something now with a drop in fuel that can help us get closer to achieving our decarbonization goals.
And I think you've touched upon one of the important things that we often reiterate as well, is that biomass-based diesel fuels like biodiesel and renewable diesel are here and available for your use now. And that's important. Certainly, I mean, the three of you are leaders in the rail industry in those different areas. But what do you see as a future in 5 years from now? Normally I would ask, a panel, hey, are you planning on increasing your blends? But two of you are at 100% renewable fuel. You have totally displaced petroleum diesel fuel, which is absolutely fantastic, and done it safely and done it efficiently. But what does your crystal ball say? What's the future? Are we on a glide path for increased use of biofuels? Are you looking at alternative technologies? And I'll just throw this out there. You know, we often hear in other applications about the use of electrification, hydrogen, methanol, ammonia on the marine side. Any of those poking their head into your world, Thad?
You know, I think just the presence of 6 Class 1s now, being members of Clean Fuels is a strong indicator of at least how the rail industry sees the place of biofuels in terms of its operations. Really, when we think strategically about how we're going to continue to decarbonize, it's really 3 things. First is you can just use less fuel, right? And our railroad is always working on ways technologically, operationally, in terms of network efficiency and planning to simply use less fuel. And we've done, I think, a good job of chipping away at that. 1% a year, that adds up over time. But clearly, it's not going to get us to a 50% reduction overall. Mm-hmm. The second way to go after decarbonization is to change the CI, change the carbon intensity of the fuel. And that's where biofuels comes in. With the great carbon intensity reduction that we can get with a drop-in solution, that's a button that we want to continue to push. And then lastly is, of course, to completely change your propulsion technology. That, like I said, that's really in the future for us. It's difficult to predict where that's going to land. There are a lot of factors that depend on that. It's not just about getting a locomotive to run, but where's the power going to come from, and the availability of that is really kind of a national conversation that needs to happen, as I think you've seen in the press over time. Mm-hmm. So looking forward, I think want to continue to grow our biofuels use where it makes sense for us economically, where the availability is there. We're encouraged by the growth of incentives at a state level for, like, New Mexico, for example, launching their LCFS program. Our largest fueling terminal is in New Mexico, so we're super excited about that. So I think we see a bright future as long as those factors continue to play in.
Otis, what about for you? Your crystal ball, any good?
Looking at the crystal ball, I would bring up, I believe it was Pete from yesterday, the gentleman from Denmark. He said, if I could predict the future, I wouldn't be here right now, I'd be on an island somewhere. But if we're talking about what do we see as the long-range plans, I would say for the next 5, possibly 5 to 8 years, that the plan would be to see more and more use of R&D. And then also the hydrogen footprint as well, because we're exploring that technology as well on the hydrogen locomotive side. And obviously I mentioned that we already have a battery electric locomotive. Well, one of the things that I think the world outside of railroading doesn't do is give railroad companies enough credit for not only advancing technology, but being ahead of technology. Because right now, it wouldn't do any of us any good to have a 100% fleet of electric locomotives because the grid can't handle it. We have progressed ahead of the grid. And those are some of the facts that we have. Everyone wants to be here now with zero, but we can't, not we, but the system can't handle that right now. And so if you look beyond 10 years, then I would say a much more robust footprint on the EV side. But between now and the next 5 to 8 years, I would say more on R&D, more in hydrogen, and just continuing to get greener, greener, greener. But we have to fix that charging station element of it. And we have to fix the battery portion of it. So even if you want to move to the point of plug and play with the batteries, you're pulling out a battery set, you're putting in a battery set, then that battery set's going to charge. So now you no longer have one locomotive taking 5 hours or 10 hours to charge. Mm-hmm. So those are some of the things that I envision in the future, 10 years out. But up until that point, you know, those are my comments in regards to R&D and hydrogen and so on.
And on the heavy haul side, the long distance side, it could be even longer. I just want to reiterate that that battery technology or infrastructure, hydrogen technology simply doesn't exist yet for the long-haul, heavy-duty Class 1 arena.
Well, there were concerns a couple years ago, and if all you do is see headlines, there were a lot of people writing diesel off. Diesel's dead. And I think we're past that point. Lisa, what about you? What do you see?
Well, I'm going to riff first on what Otis was saying and saying that my philosophy is don't let great be the enemy of good. We've got a clean fuel today that's getting us the GHG reductions. Let's use that. It's not a zero-sum game that you must be zero or nothing. And so my crystal ball only works about 5 years out. That's about all I can handle. And I see more clean fuels. We see renewable diesel as a very long bridge for us towards zero. And the majority of our fleet, 75% of it are Tier 4 locomotives. And the latest one was put into service in 2021. So, the lifespan of these are 30 plus years. So we're not going to just go and replace that. It doesn't make sense. Even if electric and hydrogen was here today, but we see the technology much, much further out beyond that. And, we've done the modeling. And again, as that said, we're running passengers, and so we have quick turnaround times. So electrification is probably not going to work on the majority of our track. And again, hydrogen locomotive is not yet here. So we are all in on renewable diesel and very happy with that. In fact, we did the big PR push back 3 years ago when we made that launch and complete transition. And we had elected officials out, our board out, and I knew we did this big PR splash, but after that sizzle of the marketing went away and the newscasters left and people didn't see it on TV anymore, that I wanted our riders to know every time they stepped on a locomotive, our train, that it was running on clean fuel, and to really educate the population and our riders. And so I worked very closely with our operations group because I wanted them to be involved. They were intricately a part of the puzzle that made this happen. And so we have these big splashy labels on our tanks. And it said that this locomotive is running on 100% clean fuel. And so every time someone's stepping on board our train, they see those labels and they know. And so every time, so that's what we hope is our legacy, is that not only are we putting in our tank, but we're trying to get riders aware of and more awareness of clean fuels.
Well, as we continue this discussion, I've got a couple more questions, but let's throw up on the screen, if the audience has one or two questions they'd like to ask the panelists, we can certainly look at taking some of those. I think, Thad, you touched upon it earlier. Clean Fuels is proud to partner, not just with our members, but across the industry, because we do look at, for my role, for instance, the technical aspects of what it takes for renewable fuels. We have other areas, and you guys have each heard here on the stage the last day and a half. We cover federal affairs and state affairs and the environmental sciences, reducing those CI scores, as well as several other areas, that are important to the entire industry. What's going to get in our way? If we see that it's, renewable diesel is CI score, a lot of talk about regulation, and we don't need to talk about specific regulations, but are we going to be able to get out of the way of ourselves, to use more renewable fuels?
Well, let's talk a little bit about the technical side a little bit more. We 3,500 high horsepower locomotives is a gigantic investment that we need to be running as cleanly, but also as consistently as possible, right? Mm-hmm. So we typically, when we put something new technologically on a locomotive, we're looking for 50 locomotive years worth of reliability data before we kind of sign off on it and say, all right, that's good, put it on everything. And putting it on everything in itself, right? We put American flags 23 years ago when I started on the sides of our locomotives. And I found out how much that decal cost because I was in finance at the time. And when you multiply that by about 4,000 locomotives, that's a lot of money for an American flag. Now, we're proud of that, and it has reflected our heritage. But we want to make sure that things really work. And so that, in combination with maybe another little-known fact that the audience may not realize, is that our locomotives not only travel on Union Pacific tracks, but they travel on other Class I railroads as well. Just like Otis talked about, it's rather than switch locomotives when we get to the end of our track, it's more economic and it's better for the customer to be able to just let those locomotives continue on another class. Now, we keep score, right? It's not free, but it's better. So whatever technology I'm using on the Union Pacific needs to work appreciably well for the CSX, for other railroads. To that end, the industry, along with Clean Fuels, along with our locomotive OEMs, locomotive providers, have come together to do a lot of testing over the last 2.5 years on biofuels. And it's been really great to get to that 50 locomotive reliability years. We're not there yet, so the jury is still a little out on biofuels. We want to make sure it works before we really expand biofuels use across the network, across the whole locomotive base. But we have cooperated to kind of take different parts of locomotive fleets to test together on, so we can pool our data, share our information, and accelerate that learning curve as well. What's going to get in the way of biofuels adoption? It has to work. I know that sounds really boring as an answer, but it's super important to the railroads that we understand what biofuels does to locomotive fuel system hoses, for example. Do we need to upgrade hoses? When would that upgrade need to take place? Fittings, seals, et cetera. We know that there are some impacts. Understanding that maintenance curve is really important to us. And we're in the middle of that journey and that process with the other Class I railroads right now.
That boring part pays my salary.
There you go. There you go.
Otis, what about you?
Can I expand on that a minute? I would absolutely agree with all those comments. And, what gets in the way, what do we see getting in the way the next few years? First and foremost, Pacific Harbor Line is considered one of the leaders in technology. And I would consider myself to have a little bit to do with that, right? But I would also say that I've got to know that this is going to work before I sign off on it. Because I've got a $2+ million asset that I'm going to change the fuel. I'm going to change, and there's one person who the fingers point at if that doesn't work, So I've got to know that this works. So when we started the renewable diesel change, we actually started with one locomotive. And I had a very long heart-to-heart conversation with the leader of our mechanical force to say, hey, I need explicit data on how this is going on the 30-day mark, the 60-day mark, and the 90-day mark. So we used 90 days for one locomotive before we would let this filter over to a second locomotive. And so you've got to think, again, we have 25, and my apprehension, we delayed it that long. When you look at the larger ones that have 5,000, that's a lot of capital per locomotive. And so you have to know that it works. And then when you look at our locomotives, on one locomotive, in my world, the low horsepower is pulling 6,000 to 7,000 tons. And they're not pulling 6,000 tons on a level field. When you look at the port complex, that's why I put that map up there. We have multiple grades, multiple elevations, and some compact curves that this $2 million+ locomotive has to be able to function with a 7,000-ton train where part of it is on a 0.5% grade, some of it on a level, some is on a declining grade. Then we've got a curve, and it has to be able to hold, and then it has to go from zero, from stop, to pulling that 7,000 tons. And so I've got to know that these clean fuels are working before I continue on. So again, that was a 90-day process for one locomotive. And now that we're 100%, we're really still not there because each locomotive doesn't go in until a 90-day inspection. So I've got to get through like 2 cycles of my entire fleet having a 92-day inspection to make sure that I don't have any changes because of this change. So there's a lot that goes into that. And when we talk about, what are the hindrances, those are some of the hindrances because those funds are already invested in that locomotive. And as you mentioned on the rebuild side, that locomotive's, that's a 30-year investment. And so this one singular change could be a game changer. So that's why you have to progress at a slower rate. However, we're still ahead of the other industries. So those would be my comments.
Yeah, it's methodical, warm weather testing, cold weather testing.
Absolutely.
I don't know, you're doing cold weather testing kind of lately, huh, with all this polar vortex stuff. You didn't count that.
South Orange County, we hit 65, man.
There you go.
Exactly.
It was minus 15 back in Omaha this morning. Yeah.
So my admin manager actually had a parka and a heater when it was 60 outside. And I just thought that was just hilarious.
That's great. Yes, but the industry is collaborating. I think that's a really cool and important tool. We're sharing information where we can, right? I mean, we've got to be careful about how we collaborate together. We do that typically through the Association of American Railroads. But that collaboration is, I think, a cool part of how we can help move the industry together forward.
And I think that's what, certainly from my perspective, what Clean Fuels is seeing now is more of that collaboration amongst the railroad industry. Absolutely. And we're very appreciative of that. I made some comments to a few others this week that I've been with Clean Fuels now coming up on 12 years, and we have been participating in railroad industry meetings with personnel long before I even joined it, on his staff, so 15 to 20 years. And in my discussions with some of the locomotive manufacturers, we've talked about long-term durability, compatibility, seasonal testing, and I've laid out plans. And the first comment I got back was, well, that's more of a 7 to 10 year testing protocol. My comment was, well, you should have started 7 years ago because we need to get there quicker. Do have a couple questions, and I think we've touched upon some of these, but I want to help answer these questions for the audience. The first one is, what's holding you back from using more biofuels? And I chuckle because 2 of you are using 100% biofuels.
Yeah.
Short of, and I guess, Lisa, let me start with you. Do your customers know? Do the people on the rail know the investments you've made and the upgrades you've made and what you're doing?
I wish they knew more, but they are starting to know. And as far as, are we going to increase our use? Well, you might have heard a little rumor that Small Games is coming to LA in 2028. And one of the main reasons that LA won that right to host those games is that we pledged to be a car-free game. So what does that mean? That means the athletes, the service workers, the spectators, anyone going to a venue to view the game or be at the game cannot park a car in that facility. And so obviously then we're hoping that they're gonna seek alternative means of transportation, hopefully public transportation. So we're gonna have to then amp up our service to be able to provide millions of rides. And more rides equals more fuel, more clean fuel. Another thing piled on top of that is, for those of you who don't know, Brightline, they operate a train service out in Orlando to Miami. They are bringing and have started construction on a train to Vegas. And this is a high-speed electric train that's going to originate in Rancho Cucamonga, which I know that sounds crazy, but that's a city north of here, and that's actually at a Metrolink station. So you'll get off your Metrolink train, board Brightline, and in 2 hours you'll be in Vegas. So we're hoping that these mega events, mega happenings, will spur more awareness about public transportation and more adoption, and the spillover effect is that, you know, we'll continue to grow that. So that's hopefully our contribution for growing our service.
Yeah, and I'd be remiss if I didn't say, you know, our communications group has worked closely with you and Metrolink to help provide some of those additional educational moments and communications, because we're actually very proud of what you're doing as well. So anything we can do, certainly we're happy to do that. Another question, really for all of you. I mean, two of you are centrally located here, specifically in California. Obviously, UP's got a little bit bigger footprint. But state incentives, state regulations, federal regulations, how can we work more collaboratively with each of you to find the right policies, to help with what you're doing, to spur that? And I know, Thad, you've worked very closely with our state affairs team, but what else can Clean Fuels, its staff, and its members do to help you guys?
Well, I think we are working together. I think being choiceful about, you know, I think Clean Fuels does a good job of making us aware of what opportunities there may be to help educate policymakers, to help maybe even propose or suggest language, especially when legislators are considering incentives for the renewable fuels industry. Rail is not always top of mind when it comes time to think about what sectors to include in those incentives. And so there have been some good progress made and good wins there, I think, as Clean Fuels has kind of said, hey, Rail, do you want to take a look at this? And so that's been helpful. And just an internal education in terms of educating our own public affairs department in terms of what services you offer and finding common cause there in terms of state incentives has been very helpful.
We always look at this as a mutually beneficial, proposition. So hopefully, as we grow 30% more soybeans, with that additional crush here in the U.S., hopefully we can provide more product for you to move across the country as well. Otis, Lisa, what can we do more to help you? Otis?
First and foremost, I'd like to say that I received confirmation this morning from our headquarters that we are now members of Clean Fuels. That actually was supposed to happen before Christmas. The ball got dropped, but that's been taken care of now. We also have a very good relationship with, and I don't want anybody to get floored by this, okay? CARB and EPA, and also SoCal AQMD. But those are intentional relationships. We don't have the larger department, the lobbyists and so on, so we have to go outside and get that. And I think this partnership with Clean Fuels is going to enhance that already positive relationship that we have. I would also like to tie in the past question to say that in our industry, the railroad industry, and I started in this industry in '93 with the Class I Railroad, and that was coming from the military, who does not advertise, right? But just using, a business degree mindset, it's like the railroad industry is horrible at promoting itself, because the question was, how do you promote this, right? Our industry was horrible at doing that. We didn't do a good job. I think Norfolk Southern was the only railroad for like 20 years that had a commercial, and all you knew from that was the horse. You saw the horse. We've gotten infinitely better over the years of promoting railroads. So if we weren't good at promoting ourselves, we weren't good at promoting what we did good, what we did well, and what we led the industry in. So when we talk about sustainability and clean air, clean fuels, renewable diesel, we don't have a history of doing well at that. But again, I think over the last 10 years or so, maybe 15, the industry has done a little bit better at that. As mentioned earlier, we had low emission fuels on our locomotives before, and now we have renewable diesel stenciled on our locomotives now, so that we're sharing it with whoever wants to pay attention and see that. We're putting it in our slides that we do that. We're letting the ports of LA and Long Beach know that, hey, we're 100% renewable diesel. We're letting our larger customers know, UP and BN know that we're 100%. So this is something that is a work in progress for the industry, because it's not something that we've done well at in the past. But we're doing a much better job of that. But so that kind of curtails both of the questions there of how do you promote that you're using it, and what can you all do to help us. So I think that's a great partnership, and I look forward to that, particularly the help with the lobbying portion of it. So that's my answer there.
And I would say, it's about the economics, right? Fortunately for us, yes, it's a big win for the environment to use renewable diesel, but we're in California, and we have a very favorable program with LCFS. And so we're actually able, by using this fuel, to save 20% on our fuel cost, which is netting us about $6 million a year. Very helpful for a public agency. But I would say where Clean Fuels Alliance could help and continue the advocacy that you're already doing the good work is helping other states build favorable programs around LCFS. And I'm hoping from a grassroots level, it's hopefully beyond grassroots, but if we can increase the demand via economics and the supply, then I'm hoping that the mandates will kind of quietly go around on the sidelines, and just more and more of us will just keep using this good clean fuel, reducing GHGs and getting us there quicker.
Well, thank you, each of you. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking our panelists. Absolutely a fantastic discussion, and we'll look forward to continuing that.
Thank you.
Great job. Oh, it was fantastic.
So fun, thank you.
Absolutely fantastic discussion, and we'll certainly move forward with hearing more about that. Next, I'd like to bring out Kent Engelbrecht, our chair, once again. Please stay seated, just a few more minutes. We've got one more award to present this morning. To help me with that, our chair, Kent Engelbrecht. So as you've heard, Union Pacific's dedication to protecting future generations aligns with its efforts to reduce carbon emissions and promote environmentally responsible practices.
With locomotive fuel accounting for over 94% of its direct greenhouse gas emissions, Union Pacific views biodiesel and renewable diesel as key components of its decarbonization strategy. Union Pacific is helping to expand the biofuel market, connecting feedstock producers to refineries and delivering renewable fuels to end-use markets.
The Industry Partnership Award highlights UP's ongoing collaboration, fueling the rail industry's growing interest in sustainable fuel solutions. Here to accept the award with members of her team is Union Pacific President Beth Whited.
All right, we gotta turn it right side around.
Absolutely.
There you go.
Chuck's right in front of us.
The whole team.
All right. Well, thank you. Okay.
Good.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Congratulations.
You bet. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Before we break, please stay seated for a few more minutes. You never know what treasures might befall you here. I'm talking about our auction benefiting the great work of the Clean Fuels Foundation. Take a look.
Hi, I'm Tom Berry, Executive Director of the Clean Fuels Foundation. The Foundation's mission is simple: to advance research and education for biodiesel, renewable diesel, and sustainable aviation fuel. We're committed to educating policymakers and their staff. Our congressional tours offer influential stakeholders a first-hand look at the innovation and impact of the clean fuels industry. This past year, we connected 37 staffers, including representatives from USDA and EPA, with the people driving meaningful change in the transportation and agricultural industries. The Foundation also supports the annual Clean Fuel Sustainability Workshop. It brings environmental science leaders together to explore industry advancements, challenges, and opportunities. Through the Beth Calaboto Grant, we invest in the future, supporting students passionate about renewable fuels. This program inspires the next generation to take bold steps in their careers. The Foundation also guides communities navigating federal grants. EPA DARE grants have sparked a movement, leading to more vehicles on the road running on 100% biodiesel. The increased adoption of biodiesel and renewable diesel is creating cleaner air and healthier communities across the country. Your donation and sponsorships are the only way the Foundation can carry out this mission. Now you're ready to place your bids. The Foundation auction is open at Conference Central. All funds raised from the auction support the Foundation's mission. Hi, I'm Tom Berry, Executive Director of the Clean Fuels.
Tom never knows when to stop, does he? Today's your last chance to bid on items and experiences in the Clean Fuels auction, which closes at 1 local time. You could win the Bayer Baseball Party Suite for a Cardinals home game, a package that includes 12 tickets plus food and drink. You could also take home the movie posters signed by the cast and professionally framed, including some Star Wars. And if you feel the need for speed, bid on the signed poster from the original Top Gun. What better memento for a stay in San Diego? Or sheet music signed by the artist, including Taylor Swift's Love Story. But I want to thank all of our auction sponsors and all of our event sponsors. We'll see you back on the main stage after lunch for our diesel technology discussion and vehicle showcase. Thanks again.